the gradient and intercept form of a straight line. Any straight line has the basic equation y equals mx plus c. We used to call it y equals mx plus b, where the coefficient of x is the gradient of the line and the constant on its own, c or b here, is the y-intercept, that is where the line cuts through the y-axis. We'll often also see it given in the form y equals a plus bx, where of course b is our coefficient of x, but that's still the gradient. A is the number on its own, which is our y-intercept. And it's often easier to put the number on its own, the y-intercept, first, because in real life situations we'll start with this and then go up or down this amount. Here of course, y-intercept and gradient. So the skills we need to be able to find the gradient and y-intercept if we've got an equation, or if we have the gradient and the y-intercept, we need to be able to get to write the equation from that. We need to learn to sketch a line, which is different to graphing a line, and we might have to rearrange an equation in order to do that. So if we're asked to state the gradient and y-intercept, the gradient is the coefficient of x. So in the line y equals negative 5x plus 3, the gradient is negative 5, and the y-intercept, where it cuts the y-axis, is 3. Notice that the negatives matter. If this was minus 3, our y-intercept would be negative 3. The only thing in front of our x here is a negative, so of course our gradient here is negative 1. When there's no constant, it means our y-intercept is 0. If we're given the gradient and the y-intercept, for example, the gradient is 1/2 and the y-intercept is negative 3, I will do this with both forms of the line. So whether we prefer y equals mx plus c, or perhaps we prefer y equals a plus bx, it doesn't matter. Our gradient is 1/2, so we substitute that in for the coefficient of x. We'll get to our y-intercept in a minute. Now it's worth noting that if you've got a gradient of 1/2, you could just say, well actually that's x divided by 2, if you preferred, and that's positive. A y-intercept of negative 3 means this is minus 3, where our y-intercept is, and this would be negative 3 out the front here. So even with this form, we'd probably rearrange that so it was y equals x over 2 minus 3. But you can give the equation. Now when we're asked to sketch a line, this is different from graphing a line. You will draw axes but not put numbers on them. So all it is, sorry, let me grab a ruler, is you'll start with a set of axes and just label them x and y. It's an indication of what the line is like, not plotting it. You mark where the y-intercept is, and again we're just guessing. So the y-intercept is negative 1. Pick a spot that looks like it's going to be about negative 1. It doesn't matter where. And mark it, oh okay, it's got to be underneath the x-axis. That's about right, and mark it negative 1. So any line needs 2 points. 1 point we get from the y-intercept, and the other point we get from the gradient. Now you'll remember that the gradient, m if you prefer, is rise over run. Our gradient here is 2, which means if we wrote it as a fraction, that would be 2 over 1. That says I need to go up 2 and across 1. So from the point here, 0, negative 1, follow the rise of the gradient, up 2, across 1, and you can work out what that point is. X would be 1 always, because we've just gone across 1 from the y-intercept, and y is 1 because we went up 2. So you mark your y-intercept with its value. You use the gradient as a fraction to get another point, give its coordinates, and then just put a line through that, and you have sketched your line. Label it as you normally would, and that is how you sketch a line instead of graphing a line. Now sometimes you will need to rearrange because this is not in gradient intercept form. We need y equals something x plus or minus something. We need to get y on its own. So first you have to rearrange. To get y on its own, we take 2x away from both sides. So I'm starting with 2x plus 3y equals 3. I've got 3y equals 3 minus 2x. So I've subtracted 2x from both sides. I need to divide all three terms by 3 to get y on its own. So I'm dividing this side by 3 and both terms here by 3 to get y equals 3 divided by 3 is 1. And if it doesn't work out as a whole number, just do negative 2/3 x, because we want the gradient to be a fraction anyway. Once you've rearranged so it's in gradient intercept form, then you can sketch it. As always, draw a set of axes and give them their arrows and their x and y. Find the y-intercept of 1 and just put it somewhere that looks good for 1. Then remember, if you need to, rewrite gradient equals rise over run equals negative 2 on 3. That says a drop of 2 and go across 3. So my point is going to be down 2, across 3, put it somewhere about in the right spot. You can put the coordinates here if you like, or the other option is you can mark where that would line up with. So this comes to negative 1, 3, because we've gone down 2, across 3. You've got 2 points. Put a line through, arrows, and label it with its original form that was given to us. The only other thing you might get asked to sketch is something that's only got one intercept. So if I'm sketching a horizontal or a vertical line, all you really need to do is draw your axes, and label them. X is negative 2, y equals negative 2, means we cut the y-axis at negative 2, and then you can put your horizontal line straight through, give it arrows, and label it. So that is the gradient intercept form, and we've covered that set of skills.